Hello and welcome to Living With. We have a special broadcast today with Jazz Pharmaceuticals, and I'd love to introduce you to two speakers. The first is Jelissa Suarez. She is a person living with idiopathic hypersomnia, a former medical student, a sleep advocate, and a very active member of the Hypersomnia Foundation. I'd also like to welcome from Jazz Pharmaceuticals Dr. Marisa Whalen, who received her Doctor of Pharmacy degree from the University of the Sciences in Philadelphia College of Pharmacy. She is a licensed pharmacist in the state of New Jersey, and prior to joining the pharmaceutical industry, Dr. Whalen worked as a clinical pharmacist for a hospice pharmacy provider where she specialized in pain management and palliative care. Currently, Dr. Whalen is the medical director at Jazz Pharmaceuticals, where she's focused her career in neuroscience and sleep medicine. In her role at Jazz, Dr. Whalen is able to continue her passion for delivering life-changing medicines to patients through her contributions to ongoing research and medical education. It is my great pleasure to welcome both today to this Living With series. Hello, and thank you for joining this presentation today. My name is Claire Wilds-Wright, and I am the CEO of the Hypersomnia Foundation. I'm really excited to introduce Jelissa Suarez, a medical student and advocate, and a person living with idiopathic hypersomnia. And I'd also like to introduce you to Dr. Marisa Whalen, who is the medical director of affairs at Jazz Pharmaceuticals, and I look forward to having this great conversation with both of you today. So thanks for joining us and welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
I'd love for you both to share a little bit about yourself. So Jelissa, would you mind going first?
Sure. So my name is Jelissa Suarez, and I am a former medical student. As a medical student, I had the chance to serve as an interpreter for asylum seekers undergoing forensic medical evaluations, volunteered at a free clinic, and the medical institution's urban farm, which was lots of fun. Prior to med school, I worked for several years in missions ministry, supporting and working alongside missionaries locally and abroad. While I have had a tremendous desire to be more involved in the sleep community and initiatives made, my time in medical school has made it challenging. However, I did have the privilege to speak at the Hypersomnia Foundation conference last year in Charlotte, North Carolina. Had the opportunity to do research related to central disorders of hypersomnolence at my medical institution, and have presented to the medical community about idiopathic hypersomnia. The more obvious thing about me, which has already been mentioned, is that I am a person who has been living with IH for the last several years, and it has not at all been easy.
Thank you for sharing. Marisa, do you mind introducing yourself too?
Sure. Well, first of all, I just want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to be a part of this conversation. As you mentioned, my name is Marisa Whalen. I'm a medical director at Jazz Pharmaceuticals, supporting the sleep medical affairs team. And I'm a pharmacist by profession, but I've spent the last 9 years of my career in the pharmaceutical industry focused primarily on education and research in the area of central disorders of hypersomnolence, which includes idiopathic hypersomnia.
Thank you. So Jelissa, I'd love to learn a little bit more about your journey. Would you mind sharing how you learned that you actually developed idiopathic hypersomnia?
Mm-hmm. Of course. My diagnosis journey began prior to pursuing a career in medicine. I was sleeping long hours, yet felt tired most of the day, every day. Unlike others with IH, naps were refreshing, and I took one almost daily. I had consulted with my healthcare provider several times and began to check off possible causes. Mood was addressed, all labs came back negative, started working out consistently, began to eat better, started taking multivitamins and supplements. Yet, 2 to 3 years had gone by with minimal improvement. One sunny morning, I was at a local coffee shop sitting on a high chair, looking out the front window as I studied for the MCAT, which is the admission test to enter medical school. And it hit me right there. An overwhelming weight just prevailed over me. My mind was shutting down and I could barely keep my eyes open. No coffee, no walking around, no washing face, no self-talk could shake it away. The alarm bells went off in my mind, and I thought, okay, if this is not addressed, graduate school and many other pursuits are out of the question. So I consulted with my provider once again, and at that point, she finally referred me for a sleep study, which confirmed the diagnosis of IH. After being diagnosed and learning about the symptoms attached to IH was when I was able to really put into words other symptoms that I was experiencing, but had not identified apart from being simply tired all the time. Why was something as simple as getting out of bed every morning such an impossible feat? Why was it taking me so long to feel fully awake in the mornings? Why was I lacking clarity of mind at times? Those things started to make sense more and more.
Right. That's such an incredible story, and I imagine so deeply challenging day to day. Marisa, could you speak a little bit more about the specific symptoms of idiopathic hypersomnia?
Sure, of course. So idiopathic hypersomnia is a rare sleep disorder, and it often goes under-recognized and underdiagnosed. So most people who have idiopathic hypersomnia start to experience these symptoms in their late teenage years or early adulthood, but oftentimes won't get a confirmatory diagnosis for 5, 10, 15 years later due to the fact that the awareness of the condition is low, even among the medical community. So education around this disorder is of critical importance. As Jelissa just shared, there are a range of symptoms that people with idiopathic hypersomnia might experience throughout their 24-hour day. And so excessive daytime sleepiness is the most common symptom, as she described, that extreme fatigue and tiredness that people feel throughout the day, that urge to constantly fight sleep is always consistently there. But another symptom that Jelissa alluded to was something called sleep inertia. So sleep inertia is the drive to stay asleep despite efforts to wake yourself up. And so ultimately, with idiopathic hypersomnia, there's difficulty from transitioning from sleep to wakefulness. And during this transitional period, most patients will feel severe grogginess, confusion, irritability, difficulty with motor coordination, and this typically occurs in the morning upon waking up. And one of the most debilitating aspects of this particular symptom is that it can last for several hours, making it really challenging to wake up in the morning or even after a nap during the day. Now, in addition to excessive daytime sleepiness and sleep inertia, another core feature of idiopathic hypersomnia is non-restorative or unrefreshing sleep. So despite getting 8, 9, 10, 11 or more hours of sleep each day or night, people with idiopathic hypersomnia will consistently report that they still feel excessively sleepy. They never feel refreshed upon awakening, which indicates that there might be something abnormal around their sleep architecture, which we're still trying to further clarify with additional research. And then finally, there are those cognitive symptoms that Jelissa was also mentioning. So difficulty focusing, trouble thinking clearly, memory problems are often common in people with idiopathic hypersomnia, and they'll report that they just feel this constant mental fog or brain fog throughout the day, which prevents them from being really focused on what they need to do in their day-to-day tasks and activities.
Yeah, thank you for that, Marisa. Where can people go to find out more information on IH?
Yeah, so Jazz Pharmaceuticals actually has a website specifically for patients or people living with idiopathic hypersomnia called livingwithih.com. And that website includes a lot of information about what the disorder is, how to get a diagnosis, how to define the symptoms. And it also includes resources that people can use to help describe their disorder to their friends, family, coworkers, or even their healthcare provider. In addition to that, the Hypersomnia Foundation, as you know, has a lot of great resources for people living with central disorders of hypersomnolence, and you can find all of that information at hypersomniafoundation.org.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to jump back a little bit, Jelissa, and talk about your diagnostic journey. Would you be happy to share that with our audience?
Yes, of course. Like I mentioned, the journey to diagnosis was not immediate. Symptoms of excessive daytime sleepiness, despite having what I considered a good and long night's rest, inability to wake up in the morning, and cognitive dysfunction can easily be confused with other conditions. However, once I was referred to a sleep study by my healthcare provider, it took about 6 months to be diagnosed. The sleep study, which is currently the gold standard for many sleep disorders, including IH, consists of 2 parts. The overnight study, known as the polysomnogram, and the daytime nap study, known as the multiple sleep latency test. Aside from being hooked up to numerous monitoring devices with its corresponding wires and sensors, the experience is pleasant in that they try to replicate the environment of a bedroom.
Jelissa, thank you for sharing. I know you're not alone in feeling so frustrated with the diagnostic journey because idiopathic hypersomnia is so under-recognized and often misdiagnosed as other diseases, specifically narcolepsy type 2. So, Marisa, could you speak to that a little bit, the difference between idiopathic hypersomnia and narcolepsy type 2?
Sure, of course. So both disorders are characterized in the international classifications of sleep disorders as a central disorder of hypersomnolence. So you will see some overlapping symptoms such as the excessive daytime sleepiness. That is certainly a core feature of both narcolepsy type 2 and idiopathic hypersomnia. Where idiopathic hypersomnia can be differentiated is that usually with IH, people will sleep for long periods of time, but still feel unrefreshed or not restored upon awakening, and will also experience that severe sleep inertia that we just discussed. Now, with narcolepsy, on the other hand, there's a difficulty in both maintaining sleep and wake. So their sleep tends to be more disrupted. People with narcolepsy can sleep for short periods of time, feel a little bit refreshed, and then a couple of hours later feel sleepy again and feel really driven by sleep attacks. So although there's a lot of overlap, there are also a lot of distinct features that can help the HCP distinguish between the two. In addition to that, Jelissa talked about the objective sleep laboratory testing that is conducted to confirm the diagnosis of idiopathic hypersomnia. So that's the same diagnostic testing that's utilized to diagnose narcolepsy as well, except with IH, there's different criteria. Patients usually fall asleep quickly on the daytime nap test or the multiple sleep latency test. And so on average, if you fall asleep during those naps in less than 8 minutes, that would indicate the diagnosis of idiopathic hypersomnia. And the key difference from narcolepsy is that patients with IH won't go into what we call REM sleep as quickly. So that will be a feature that's absent from their diagnostic testing that would be present in someone with narcolepsy. So it's very distinct, different features, but also recognizing that there is some overlap, which makes it of critical importance to really be able to talk about the specific symptoms with your healthcare provider so that they can incorporate that information into their diagnostic process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. So sometimes as an organization, we get asked pretty regularly, how does someone find a sleep specialist? What would you say to that, Marisa?
I think it's a really great question. A sleep specialist is someone or a doctor who specialized in sleep medicine, and usually they have a board certification with the American Academy of Sleep Medicine in sleep medicine practice. So there are many different ways that you can do research to find a sleep physician in your area. The Hypersomnia Foundation, for example, has a sleep provider directory on their website where you can locate a sleep provider that's in your area or in an area that's close by that you can get to. The American Academy of Sleep Medicine is also a good resource. They have a website where you can visit and find out more information around sleep specialists in your area in particular.
Thank you. So once a person has received a diagnosis, Marisa, what's next for them?
So I think it's important to recognize, right, that idiopathic hypersomnia is a chronic disorder. And unfortunately, there isn't a cure, right, for idiopathic hypersomnia. But the good news is that there are ways that you can manage your symptoms throughout the day to help relieve some of the symptoms that you might be experiencing. So talking with your healthcare provider about your management goals is really important so you can identify the best path forward.
I think you really touched on something there about comorbidities. Marisa, could you say a little bit more about that and why the comorbidity piece is so important to raise with your healthcare provider?
Sure, of course. So at Jazz, we've actually done quite a bit of research to better understand medical conditions or additional medical conditions that might be associated with idiopathic hypersomnia, because the type of medical conditions that you have might determine the type of medications that you're able to take throughout the course of your management. So essentially, the research we have done suggests that people living with idiopathic hypersomnia are likely to have a number of different medical conditions along with their idiopathic hypersomnia. And this might include things like diabetes, high cholesterol, or psychiatric comorbidities like anxiety and depression. And some newer research we've done also shows a cardiovascular connection as well, with higher rates of things like hypertension and heart disease and people diagnosed with idiopathic hypersomnia compared to an age-matched control that does not have idiopathic hypersomnia. So it's always important to be aware of the other medical conditions that you might currently have or might currently develop in the future, and have those conversations with your sleep specialist so that you can come up with a management plan and a treatment plan that's most optimal for your individual case.
Thank you. Marisa, can you provide sort of a brief direction on research on IH and also where the study of IH is headed? What's next for IH in terms of research?
I think that it's a really exciting time right now in terms of research in idiopathic hypersomnia. There's a lot of interest right now in better understanding the underlying pathology of idiopathic hypersomnia, better tools to help diagnose the condition, as well as a plethora of new treatments that might eventually be available down the road with different mechanisms of action, different modes of administration, and that's just across the board within the pharmaceutical industry. As longtime leaders in sleep medicine, Jazz has been at the forefront of providing new therapies to support the needs of our patients, and we plan to continue to invest in developing treatments to really help create more advanced options for people living with sleep disorders like idiopathic hypersomnia.
Yeah, thank you. It's so exciting. You're right. It's such an exciting time for research and drug development, and of course for our patient community. There's a lot of information for the community, and as an organization, the Hypersomnia Foundation has several resources. We run conferences and a Unite meeting, which is an online group combining education and support once a month. And we also have a brochure that discusses IH in detail, what to expect in a sleep study, treatment options, that are FDA approved, and so on and so forth. But I also understand that organizations may be working on a patient focus guide to be distributed this year. Jelissa, as a patient, would you actually be interested in a patient guide?
Yes, very much so. A comprehensive patient focus guideline that includes both the evaluation and management of idiopathic hypersomnia could serve as a great reference for someone that is on the path from seeking answers to diagnosis to management and to being better equipped to adapt to a new normal. A guide can walk them through understanding things like, what is IH? How is it diagnosed? What does a sleep study entail? What are the treatment options and the symptoms they primarily address? Are there behavioral treatments like cognitive behavioral therapy? Are there lifestyle modifications that can be done, just to name a few?
Yeah, thank you. It is really exciting. Jelissa, do you have any final words? Maybe something we've not covered that's important to talk about?
Yes, I just wanted to And by sharing a few things, I know how consuming IH can be. I know how easy it is to feel defeated by this diagnosis, where you feel like it has taken over every aspect of your life and there's nothing you can do about it. You feel stuck, as if time continues without you and you can't seem to catch up. You feel frustrated with yourself in life, but let me just share, IH does not have to manage you. You can manage IH. There may not be a cure for it right now, but there are ways to work around it and to take some charge of your life once again. If you are experiencing symptoms, talk to your healthcare provider or seek a sleep specialist directly. Connect with the Hypersomnia Foundation community through the Hypersomnia Foundation and livingwithih.com for support groups and information. It's great to see others in the IH community coming together and supporting each other. Also, the people working with, for, and in the sleep community are willing and ready to help at any time. That's how I got connected. So as for me, I left medical school towards the end of my third year because I realized that the medical education system was not built for someone like me in mind. Based on my experiences in medicine thus far, I also felt that I would not be able to achieve a healthy long-term work-life balance. But I am confident that there are other areas that I can pursue that are more compatible with my limitations and skill sets. Please be encouraged. There are better times ahead of us.
Thank you so much, Jelissa, for sharing your personal journey that is very insightful and inspiring. Thank you. And Marisa, thank you also for the information that you've shared for Jazz's support of the idiopathic hypersomnia community. I really appreciate everyone's time today for your insights and in all the information that you've both shared with us. And for more information, please do go to www.hypersomniafoundation.org so that you can also contact a sleep specialist if that's appropriate. But we will close this recording and link all resources and slides from today's presentation below. Thank you again.